The first general election debate of the 2024 season has concluded in Atlanta, with Democratic President Joe Biden and his Republican rival Donald Trump trading attacks on various issues, from abortion to the handling of the economy early in the debate. And also, both the contenders also launched deeply personal attacks against each other. For more analysis on the historic debate and how perhaps it can change the path of 2024 campaign, we're now being joined by Stephen Golub, political analyst and lawyer from California. Welcome to our broadcast, Mr. Golub, and thank you so much for taking our time and being here with us today.
Thank you.
Now, Mr. Golub, the last time both Trump and Biden were on the same stage was at 2020, and like I mentioned, that both the contestants traded barbs over various issues, from migration to abortion and even the democracy and the attack on the Capitol Hill. What exactly stood out for you?
Well, it was a debacle for Biden. Trump was horrible and horrifying. He lied consistently, repeatedly, but Biden performed even worse. He was constantly on the defensive. He lost his train of thought repeatedly. Early on, he simply couldn't complete an answer. He lost the train of thought and ran out of steam and trailed off. And there were several other times when he came very close to doing that, or in effect did it. Even when he scored some points, such as accusing Trump for being a whiner, for complaining so much, those points often were delivered without passion and were buried in a answer that jumped from A to B to C to D. So unfortunately for Joe Biden, the main takeaway from this debate, even though Trump lied so much and was very bad himself, was that it was an even worse and I'd say even disastrous performance for Biden.
Absolutely, Mr. Golub. That's what everybody is talking about right now. With Biden's uneven performance, there are growing concerns now on Biden's age and if he can perhaps be replaced. And if that has to happen, what is the procedure going forward?
Well, the procedure really is that Joe Biden has to agree to be replaced. And there's the rub. The way the Democratic and Republican conventions work is that delegates have been selected already. They're bound to Biden, to support Biden on the first ballot. So if Joe Biden wants to say, no, I'm running no matter what anyone else says, those delegates will vote for him and he'll get the nomination. If, however, there's enough pressure generated on him by party elders and leaders, by the public, by the Democratic public, by journalists, etc., there's a chance he might step aside, but then how would it be done gracefully? How would it be done diplomatically? I would think that people would find health reasons for him, or he would find health reasons, but it would be a very delicate negotiation. The first step then would be for him to agree to step aside. And then what we'd have would be what's called an open convention, in which various leading Democrats, whose names are known nationally to some extent, might then vie for the votes of the delegates. And that would decide who would get the nomination.
Right. That's what the Democratic camp said, that Biden wasn't feeling too well, and that's why his voice was perhaps hoarse. And with Kamala Harris also claiming that even though Biden started slow, he finished strong. But I also want to talk to you about whether the debate, the 90-minute debate at the CNN headquarters in Atlanta, whether that managed to bring about the kind of impact that both the contenders were hoping for, and how perhaps will it impact the undecided voters in America?
Well, there's one caveat to everything I've just said, which is that the impact remains to be seen. We can't be certain, because it's possible that the post-debate spin by Biden supporters, surrogates speaking for him, such as Vice President Harris, will be able to affect people's perceptions in the days and even weeks to come, so that what seems like a certain Biden loss right now could be ameliorated or even negated as various stories get out there, including stories about all the horrible lies that Donald Trump told and his own meandering. So we can't be sure, but if I had to guess right now, I'd say that the impact is that it's definitely hurt Biden and helped Trump.
Talking about geopolitics, apart from migration and abortion, geopolitics was also at the center of the discussion of the debate, and the current two wars, the war in Ukraine and the war between Israel and Hamas, with Trump emphasizing on how the Ukraine war wouldn't have taken place at the first place if he was the president. He also went on to call Zelensky a salesman for the second time. A latest poll suggests that 70% of Americans want the war to come to an end. Now, the war broke out under Biden's presidency. How do you see this playing out in favor of Trump and against Biden?
Well, I'm going to get back to the debate and answering your very good question, in that this was an opportunity for Joe Biden to say to Trump, hey, maybe the war started because Putin feels that if you get back in office, Zelensky and Ukraine will be completely abandoned because you, Donald Trump, have been Putin's poodle, have been Putin's lapdog. Biden could have said things like that, could have gone on the attack. And Biden could have said, look, he could have said much more effectively, look, I, Joe Biden, rallied NATO together to oppose this Russian invasion, to oppose the Russian crimes against the civilians of Ukraine. But he failed in that regard. I still think that even there are people who, of course, want the war to end. The majority of the American public and even the majority of Congress wants to continue supporting Ukraine and allying with NATO. But the debate was a missed opportunity for Biden to drive that point home and to point out Trump's weaknesses in terms of how much he has kowtowed to Putin and been weak in dealing with other world leaders, such as those of North Korea and China.
Right, but last question to Mr. Golub. Talk to us about the new rules, muted mics, no live audience, rebuttals in a very stipulated time frame. How do you think that panned out in today's debate?
You know, within the narrow framework of the debate, I think it panned out well. It was, some other countries, I've seen debates from France, for example, have a similar format where the parties can't interrupt each other. They don't have a studio audience. I think it made for a more civil debate than what we've had previously, where whether or not it's Trump or Biden, just generally U.S. presidential debates have been pandering to the audience, going for cheap lines. Partisans on both sides have tried to weigh in from the audience to make it seem like their candidate has more support. So it really was a good thing that the debate played out this way in terms of these rules. It's far more civilized and allowed for people, the candidates, to put forth their thoughts as best they could. Unfortunately, Mr. Trump didn't do it that well, and Mr. Biden did it even worse.
Right, Mr. Golub, thank you so much for taking our time and joining us here on WION Conversation with your insights on this historic and consequential debate in the United States of America.
Thanks for having me.